Okay. So, born in 1873, that's quite a while back. Died in 1962, that made him about 88 years old. And he was a socialist politician. This is bringing up things. But at the same time, he was a 1936 candidate for the Socialist Party of America, Vice President of the United States, with Norman Thompson as president. He was the 50th Speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly, represented Polk County for 3 terms. Danish, young farmer. Then this is, glosses over a bunch of stuff. He was one of the original sourdoughs, miner in the gold rush of 1898. And his friend, who we just saw the picture there, died. We'll go into that a little bit. Had a farm in Milltown, came back with some gold, a farm in Milltown, had a small farm, and married the father of 7 children. Let's see, he was active in the cooperative movement, and I'm going to go into just the gold rush part, but he really was active in that, in the cooperative. His idea of socialism was co-ops, and if you had in Milltown, he helped with the dairy co-op get started. He helped the dairy co-op, the creamery co-op create a laundry co-op for the women, so they could send, along with the milk, they could send their clothes in and get it washed by machine there. He joined the, well, he was on the Board of Regents of the of Wisconsin, all sorts of organizations. There's a poster of him in a political thing. So there's a whole bunch you could read about him and his politics. And Vicki had tubs of campaign memorabilia and ribbons and all sorts of things. Some of that went to the Wisconsin Historical Society. I can't remember how much they took, but you remember the guy came out and...
Yes, but they already had a lot of stuff too.
Oh, they did, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My Aunt Belva Kussler donated a whole lot of things to the Wisconsin State Historical Society in the 60s, I think. And so there's boxes of that stuff that's at the Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They wanted a couple things that the family has never been able to come to terms with giving them.
Sure,
so,
probably the journal from the Yukon.
The diary? Yep.
Yep, diary. Yeah.
I mean, they have a copy of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But they wanted that and the gold that he brought back.
Yeah.
And
well,
that
he brought back more like souvenir gold for his grandchildren, right? For children.
Well,
I mean, you've got a piece of souvenir.
I have a nugget, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was my dad's. Each one of the 7 kids got a nugget. But originally he had like baking powder tins and things like, people kept things in anything. It wasn't made for it. And when people would come to visit, my dad said, he would pass those around. And they got less and less quantity over the years. So pretty soon there were fewer and fewer nuggets in the...
Yeah.
But he also had a watch, a pocket watch, a watch chain, the links were nuggets, a ring, and then all these stick pins made. And those are still in the family, but the family's never been able to agree on what to do with them.
Yeah, well, the reason that the Wisconsin Historical Society was interested in this is he was a statewide figure. He was also a national figure, but he was statewide. If he would have been just a county politician, which he also was, then the county would probably be the one that would be interested. But anyway, I got to rummage through a lot of tubs of that and photograph a lot of it, and so it fascinated me. So before we get into the gold mine, I had put together just like some of this stuff that I better look this way so I can see what I'm doing. So, we looked at the Wikipedia site. Here's an old picture of him when he was younger. It's kind of pretty badly damaged. Here's a few clippings. This is when they had their 50th wedding anniversary. They got married in something like 1901 or 2. I think I'll see that. Maybe it says here. But the journal or diary of him, he leaves Wisconsin, heads out west to Seattle and on up, disappears into the Klondike, and he leaves behind a girlfriend, Christine, right?
Anna Christine.
Anna Christine, okay. And who was left, when he left, she was pretty angry at him, according to his diary, because he wouldn't stay. Gold was more important than this girlfriend, it sounded like. And so anyway, he was upset, and so it took him quite a while to he would write back to his sister, Nora, and ask about his girlfriend, and then eventually they started corresponding again, and anyway, they got reconciled when he came back. So this is his farm over by, just north of Milltown. Buildings are still there. They don't look as fancy as this, the house doesn't. Big barn, 2-story barn, quite innovative. This is the same place before. The only part that's the same is, if you look at this shed right here, that's the same.
And the windmill.
Oh, and the windmill, yeah. But it looks like he built a whole new, because this is a different kind of barn. It's a 2-pitch barn, and the one up there isn't, and the house is clearly different too. So that's, I thought maybe those rocks were some kind of a trick photograph,
No.
but maybe Milltown has got that kind of fields. I don't know. It looked pretty interesting anyway. Annual crop of rocks at the George Nelson Farm, Milltown. The local photographer was Christian Nelson. This is another local picture. On the left is George, and this is the Polk County Fair Board, probably early 1900s. I'm not sure who the rest of those folks are, but anyway, George was on the fair board here. This is the grandstand, the old grandstand. Now, if you looked at that, you'd say, oh, George is talking to Mrs. Roosevelt, but that's not Mrs. Roosevelt. That's another politician in the Socialist Party, Anna somebody, I can't remember. So when he ran for political office, in the magazine for the Socialist Party was called the Socialist Call. Oops, here, let me kill this. Anyway, they wrote a biography of him, and of course this is the version that you write for 1936, which sort of glosses over some of the other things, but all right, so let me just take it. Hello? Yes, could I, are you at 612-806-7034? Could I call you back? I'm in the middle of giving a talk. Yeah, you're okay. I'm a cemetery sexton, and someone died and they want to bury him. So I have to decide what's usually they don't bury him the same day, so. Okay, so anyway, this was and then when he died, the state legislature did this resolution for a former member, and so they said, okay, and so we'll hit a few of the highlights. Son of a Danish settler, Jens Nielsen, born in Polk County, 1873, changed his name from Nielsen, it was to Nelson. He was in the gold rush, traveled in 38 states, became a farmer, and was a local school clerk for 35 years, progressive leader. In the early days, the Republican Party was also somewhat, there was a progressive party and stuff, and so he was more in that than the socialist. Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin, a socialist candidate for governor, and then vice president, and prominent cooperative leader, and involved in all of the local co-op things, including the holiday. During the Depression, people were losing their farms, and so there was a group that went around and tried to prevent auctions. So anyway, that was the thing. So, okay, so now that's enough general stuff. We should get into the gold rush, shouldn't we? Let's see if I can find my glasses. What this is a website I'm working on so that I can put stuff out. And let's see here. Yukon Gold Rush. All right, so here we are with the front page on that. All right, so some of you who had come were early. George, you're going to have to hear this. George is 25 years old, just had decided that even though he'd worked for wages for quite a while and tried different things, he wasn't ever going to get enough money to get ahead, and so he thought, well, the big thing going on is the gold rush in the Yukon. People are going up there and digging up gold and getting rich, and so he decided, he and a friend of his, Kappel-Jensen from Milltown, decided that they should head off to the Yukon and get rich. So the journal that oh shoot.
You're editing.
Yeah, I'm in the wrong. Okay, I'm an editor of this. Let's switch. Okay, so let me. All right. I need to come in as a genuine off the street viewer. All right, so this is like somebody else, like one of you came in. So he had this diary, and that's the most fascinating thing to read. So here's okay, this is, as I said, a copy of a copy of a copy. Pretty missing things. I would guess if a person started over with the original and tried to copy it, maybe it'd be better, but you can read a lot of it. So this is his first page in there. George A. Nelson Patterson, Polk County, Wisconsin. See, now Milltown didn't exist really yet because the railroad hadn't come through, so Patterson was the local town. And then at the bottom here is when he was leaving. At the end of the diary, he signed George A. Wilson, and it says, dated March 16th, 1900, Checo something hill. That's one of the Yukon places. Chicheco, okay. Anyway, so he says, my name is George Nelson. This is if anybody found his diary after he died or something. Polk County, Wisconsin, age 24, so he hadn't quite got 25 yet. He and Chris bought a Pennsylvania Mutual $1,000 life insurance in the Twin Cities before they left. And then he has his free miner certificate. You had to have a license to mine, so he had that, and then a free miner certificate for the next year, for 1898 and then for 1900. So those are his paperwork things. Let's go down a little bit into the diary. So this is where he says about why he's going. So let's see if we can read that. Upon these pages will be found the truth, the only truth, the honest truth. So help me God, amen. So he's saying he's not going to do too much lying. Gold miners might have a tendency to do. If I am not to land upon my own native shore, Wisconsin, again, finder, please send this to my home. So then he gives his itinerary going and coming from Alaska, or he went through Alaska on his way to Canada. But instead of looking at it here, let's go over here, where I've transcribed it already. So here's his route, and he took what's called the rich man's route, which was you took a train from here, essentially from the Twin Cities to Seattle, bought your gear and everything, then you took a boat along the coast all the way up around Alaska to where the Yukon River comes out, and then up a riverboat in the Yukon. So these are the Milltown to Minneapolis, so we're going to do 60 to 70 miles. Minneapolis to Seattle on the train, 1,400. Seattle to St. Michael, Alaska, that I believe is where the Yukon River hits the ocean. And then St. Michael to Dawson City, up the rivers. And so that gave him about a 72 to 7,300 trip that took him to get to the gold. So here's also what I just showed you. Okay, so then here's another piece, which I like these front parts because they tell you his motivations. So let's see if we can read that. I leave my home this 20th day of April 1878 to investigate the steamship and railroad boom of the gold fields in Alaska, to see how much in the line of facts there will be something or other. I leave for the purpose of educating myself in living an adventurous life, and also for the purpose of ensuring something, wages, better wages than I have at present. So I will soon be able to be in a position so I can live more independent than at present. At the same thing he was thinking, and I'll be able to afford a wife and a farm.
He was working in a sawmill in Minneapolis
yes,
before he left. Yeah, that's the wages he was getting, whatever they were
Yeah,
paying.
and in Alaska, or in the Yukon, wages were way higher. So he took some pictures on the way out, or somebody took some pictures that he had on the way out to Seattle. So these came from the stuff that, was it Belva was the name of that had donated stuff to the Wisconsin?
Belva was his daughter.
Yeah, so some of this came from her stuff. And these are printed on blueprint paper. It was a cheaper way of printing photographs than, so this is just along the railroad. So Hope, Idaho here, and he just took a few pictures of things on the way. I'm not sure. There's the railroad. You can see him in the middle right there, and going out. And this is when they got out there. Well, they got out there. They didn't have any money after they bought their supplies, and so and the boat they were taking, the Hayden Brown, wasn't ready, and so they had to try to get a little bit of labor and try to work and get by cheap. So there was tent cities of people waiting to go to the Yukon. So he was there probably several weeks. This is another one of those groups of people. I suppose he's probably in there, but it's a little hard to tell. Anyway, those are pictures. When he actually wrote about his things, the Hayden, H-A-D-Y-N Brown, is the ship that he took. Now, every page, not every page, but most of them have some little doodling on the top, and there are undoubtedly some code he's doing. See, 2 equals a, in that initial backpack, he had a cube, and he had some other stuff. Well, these are, I haven't deciphered what he's doing. The top one, though, is letters, or envelopes, because he was very important. Well, he was very interested in his mail, because that's how he kept in touch with home. I'm not sure what these cubes mean, but it's interesting. So he's out in Seattle, raining. It's waiting for the ship to take off. It turns out the ship that he picked was a real tub. And they overloaded all of them going up anyway. And he and his friend had decided, well, they were going to get the job of shoveling coal on the ship so they could earn their way up through. And so while they were waiting, they had to have someplace to live, and they were trying to spend money. So he's talking about that. He goes to the Salvation Army services if they had a free lunch and stuff. And he says he picked some strawberries. And again, over on the right, Hayden Brown. So this is him. Here's the Hayden Brown in its better days. It was retrofitted, had a steam engine on it too, which it turns out rarely worked. And so here's that picture again. So if you see those symbols down there on his stuff.
We still have the knapsack that's sitting
Yeah,
there.
I know, I saw that, yeah.
But the rest of this stuff, I don't think is, maybe those, whatever that is on the bottom, what the name's on is theirs, because it looks like his writing. But like the coats and things, and the hats and the mitts, I think those were
Props.
photographic props.
Probably.
And I bet there's hundreds of pictures
that have the same.
throughout the United States with those same coats on, because I never saw any of that kept, so
Yeah.
and it probably would have been.
And he does say in his diary that when they got to, I don't know, St. Michael's or someplace, then they bought some of the Indian or the parkas and things like that.
But this is in Seattle, so
Yeah,
I
this
think,
is a-
I
yeah,
think
this is
this
a
was, you
staged
paid to get a
photo, yeah.
photograph.
But it's pretty slick, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. I think it's pretty glamorous, but
Yeah.
you can see that's a backdrop, a
Yeah.
photographic backdrop.
Yeah.
Those aren't real trees.
Well, everybody was trying to make a buck off of
Sure.
this gold rush, and so the suppliers and the whatever, so.
That middle mark, is that an infinity mark?
Well, that's what I thought too, but he's got dots, 2 dots under and over it, and 2 dots in the
Yeah, I
things, and
noticed
then a loop. It's like you drew like this, you drew, maybe it's just a fancy thing that people put at the end of their letters. In the old days, people wrote and they did some flourishes and things, but
The pistol is real.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's still in the family.
yeah, that's down, and there's one, I think there's one probably in his belt maybe too. I can't tell.
And maybe one of them is real and one of them isn't. I
Yeah,
don't
well,
know.
I'm guessing,
right.
yeah. So now, I was over to Vicky's and she was showing me some things. He may have had this on the, up there, right? This is his, we'll say maybe.
Maybe.
Yes, but
I
it's-
think that's pushing it, because you know
Yeah.
what? That's kind of a big thing, and
Yeah.
I don't know how much room you'd have to carry
Yeah.
that along.
You probably didn't need to look for gold through,
No,
No.
so this one is though.
that he had in his tent.
Yeah, that's a little, I looked on the internet and they said, well, they made those up there and they sold them and they called them like miners' lamps.
Because in the diary, he says that he's writing by
Yeah.
light from that
Yeah,
lamp.
probably.
Oh.
So let's just go down here. This was also over at Vicky's. I don't know if that went along or not.
No,
Maybe.
I think that's from his political career.
Oh, okay,
It's in too
Yeah.
good a condition.
yeah. So, they took the ocean route, called Rich Man's Route, and here's what he says. The Hayden Brown left Puget Sound Wednesday of 1898. At last we start. We have been booked to leave for a long time, but at last today we're ordered on board, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The wharf was a touching scene. I'm very glad I didn't have any dear ones to bid adieu, although there's something nice, even if it's touching. It is. And I tried to use, it's handwritten, so I tried to use ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, to help me figure out what it says, so I don't know what the nourish is. He's supposed to be, I leave now with 6 cents in my pocket, bound for Dawson City. The same goes, Klondike or bust. Oh, I guess it's bust in my case. What took my money was the 3 days board after we were promised to have an hour chilling on the Brown and extra helping out in money, so they was gonna start working early on the boat, but they didn't start. I feel good and happy, not full of wild hopes, nor full of pity on myself. I just wish I would have luck on my journey and make money so I can live and have things a little bit easier. Our boat is a bogus affair. It runs on, well, let's say a cheap principle, small crew, poor management, not enough bunks. We sleep on the top of a boat. On deck is 2 lifeboats only and life preservers of no kind. It surprises me that we even got clearance. Seattle looks beautiful as we now lay tied up 1 mile away. Mount Rainier is to the right and the rest to the west is Seattle. And he's looking back at all the tents of the people who still didn't have a boat to get on. So now we're going to look at the route. Now pretend the bottom is Seattle. It's actually probably a little further down than what I've got. Well, maybe that's right. So there were different routes to get to the gold fields. A very popular one was boat part way, then you climbed over these big hills and down, built a raft and floated down to Dawson City. There were some overland ones which were pretty terrible too. He took this route, the boat, all the way up. This Aleutian Island place was a stop where they could buy some supplies, and then up here, and this is the Yukon River, and they had to wait until, I think it was into June before that thawed out enough so that they could actually go up to Dawson City. And so when they got to the Yukon, they also got a job working on that riverboat. I think it was firing also, going up. The riverboats were really always looking for people in that area, because as soon as they got up to Dawson City, they'd all go look for gold and they'd lose their crew. So when they finally got up there, Chris went to look for a mine, George went to look for a mining area, and Chris stayed on the boat and did a couple more runs on the river to make some money for them. And so while he was gone, George found the decent claims were all taken, so you had to sublet a claim. So he got the sublet a piece of somebody else's claim and did that. And they built a log cabin on it for the winter because they did their mining in the winter. They called it, I don't know if it's called placer or placer mining, but what you did was you had your sort of river valleys or stream valleys, and the streams had washed gold down and it settled right on the bedrock, and so most of these streams were under like 20 feet of permafrost, and so you had to thaw your way down. And they didn't mine in the summer; they only mined in the winter when I guess it wasn't mud or something. But so then how they did was dug their shaft down, say 20 feet, and then drifted, went sideways, and then each bucket of dirt they brought up from the bottom where the gold was supposed to be, they piled, and then in the spring they would, when the water came, floated or melted out, they'd sluice it and get the gold out of it. So all winter was firing. Every night they'd build a fire to thaw out some more area, and then shovel in the day and crank the windlass up with a bucket up to the top. And so, anyway, so he went the rich man's route. Took a long time. And so here are some of the other maps too. That's not very good. Actually, if you looked at Dawson City, this is the gold mining area. There's different streams that came on the Yukon, but the Bonanza Creek one was a very popular one, and then there was some others. And I probably have it further on, but I think he was somewhere out in here on a piece. Something like 6 miles from Dawson City was somewhere around that, he said. Oop. So,
How long did it take them to sail from Seattle to St. Michael?
let's see here. I have that down someplace. He's got everything in his diary is dated, and it might have been, by the time he got to Dawson City, probably at least a month, but I'm not sure. We may run into that, or if I'm lucky, you'll forget that question. I could probably find it. So, if you went gold mining in Alaska, it was pretty bad. A lot of criminals, a lot of guys, Soapy Smith would run a town. It was really bad. If you went into Canada, in the Yukon, it was not. There was not crime. There was prostitution and that stuff, but it was sort of
Organized.
and gambling, but it was well policed. There was no problem really with robbery or murder or any of those things, hardly at all, because the Mounties were there and kept a really tight lid on it, and they licensed everything. And so if you were in Alaska, it was sort of really, you really had your life in your hands, whereas in the Klondike here, or the Yukon, it wasn't a problem. So now I have to, one of the things let's read this. In his diary for August 6th, 1899, yesterday we had our pictures taken, moving style, for the World's Fair in Paris. It will undoubtedly be the prettiest on record. Machinery running, pump a-going, 2 sluice heads of water, sawing wood, hauling poles, slushing, running the wheelbarrow and stripping, and Mrs. Dugas with a year of gold in her lap picking the black sand out with a magnet. It is a picture that will be looked upon by millions and studied by the masses and exhibited all over the world. Edison's movie crew was up there in 1899. They were trying to take pictures of things that were exciting. So let's look at that film. The whole film obviously doesn't exist, but the Smithsonian had got a piece of it. Let's see if this works up here. Okay, they colorized it, they improved it, and they still got advertising. Let's see. Okay, skip. Okay, I gotta put some sound on here. Let's see. Hang on. Somebody took my glasses.
In your pocket.
All right, let's stop it, and let's put it back at the beginning, and let's see if we can get my,
Sound was down on the bottom.
yeah, I just have it turned off. Okay, let's see if this does it.
District near the Alaskan border. Getting there,
Not very loud.
means sailing north from Seattle, where gold fever attracts thousands of dreamers, and the
I'll
cameras
try again
of
here.
movie pioneer Thomas
Volume
Edison.
should be here.
Local
Full volume.
outfitters make a killing, as all supplies have
Full
to be taken
volume.
with you.
Well,
Even horses.
anyway, that's it. All right, we'll start over. Let's start and let's just look
In
this time.
1896, prospectors find
I
gold
guess I'd
in the
have to have a
Klondike,
speaker
Canadian
system with that.
district near the Alaskan border.
So this is
Means
Dawson
sailing north from
here,
Seattle.
or this is sailing north, it says,
Gold fever
and
attracts
it's
thousands
obviously
of
quite poor
dreamers,
quality, but
and the cameras of movie pioneer
it's from
Thomas
I think
Edison.
it's pretty good considering
Considering,
how
yeah, I
old and
can
the
see it is,
conditions.
yes, it is pretty good. We should have shut the lights off in here. Does anybody know how to do that? Maybe over there. Let's see if that helps. Oh, that's
The
better.
steamship Queen is among
The
the
problem is
first to
that people
cast
fall
off,
asleep then.
overflowing with prospectors.
So see how thick that filled that boat is? And then this is the ocean passage
In
that they
time,
went up.
100,000 will head to Alaska. Most through
So,
the makeshift port of
some of them
Skagway.
went to Skagway and then overland.
From
This
here,
is some of the outfitting
250
places.
miles inland to
I
the
believe
Klondike.
this is still Skagway here.
Canadian Mounties actually made them prove that they had enough goods.
Years,
to
yeah,
take
full
along.
winter
Oh,
supply.
that's right.
So here's some of the supplies, because there was no way to get food in the wintertime in Dawson City, because they just didn't have boats or anything, so you had to bring it in. This is the people who climbed over those hills, which George and
Only
Chris didn't do.
30,000 make it
They,
to stake their claim.
These folks had to climb up a big hill. Now here's George's area. That second year he was working, one of those people is probably him, but
Over the next
I don't
3
know.
years,
He was working for wages that year. I believe it was $10 a day,
but only a few
room and board, and so that was pretty good money. And he didn't waste it on gambling or women or the things. But that's the piece of it right there. So let's get out of that. So
This is the
anyway,
quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
okay,
have to poop.
I'll cut some of these other
Stop!
other
Are you trying to kill us?
things I have and see if I can figure out where I'm supposed to be. Is that editing? Yeah, this is the one. Okay, so this was the little movie clip. So I had his picture taken in Dawson City when he got there. Kind of dark. He says bad. But it's one to send back to his, and it's obviously a studio picture, send back to his parents. He wasn't sending anything to his girlfriend yet. Now, the tragedy is, Chris Kappel-Jensen finished his riverboat thing, and by December they were mining full tilt, had their hole dug into the ground, and were going sideways and hauling dirt out. And anyway, Chris was on top cranking up the rope, and according to the diary, something happened, like the crank broke or something, and it started dropping the bucket of stuff down where George was underneath, although George could have been to the side. So Chris hollered and jumped over onto the reel, got thrown down the mine shaft, and it paralyzed him from neck down. And he lasted 2 weeks in their log cabin. This was December 4th. Let's see, I think it was December 14th he died, okay? This is what George put in his diary. So he was without a partner. Homestake Gulch was the place he was at. And so they buried him. Now, there's a big, huge burial grounds on Dawson City, an old cemetery. And he just put, okay, here's what he did for the grave. I sent some information or sent some emails up to the people up there, and they said, oh, the old part of the cemetery is not kept up and it's all woods and everything, and you'd never find this, and they didn't keep any records anyway. And so he said, I fixed up his grave on Christmas, and to have a picture taken, but it costs a bunch, I can't afford it. They still haven't made any money on their mining because they were still digging. And so I laid 2 rows of rocks around it, first large ones, then smaller ones, and then a cross in the middle of 3 rocks, a row of cross and a nice spruce at the top. He had a $1,000 life insurance policy, which then George started trying to get to pay for his Chris had married and had kidded, or 2 back home, and tried to get the money paid to the family, and the whatever it was, life insurance, Pennsylvania Life Insurance Company, never could get enough paperwork to pay it off. So even they had ads in the local Dawson newspaper, any information on that, because people didn't do death certificates really or anything hardly in those days. I mean, it was just a very, well, they didn't. And so anyway, that left him, okay, now, that left him
But
without
that
a partner.
really influenced his life, because when he got into the legislature, he worked tirelessly trying to get fair insurance laws passed. because quite a few of the insurance companies would form in states that had very weak laws. And he wanted Wisconsin to get strong laws so that anything that was created in Wisconsin, so people would get paid. They didn't just buy an insurance policy and then it never came to anything. And so that's what, in the 1920s and 30s, he was working really hard on.
And Wisconsin is, I don't know if it still is, but was one of the few states that had a $10,000 life insurance policy you could buy through the state. And it was, so you could, I don't know if they still have it, but that was set up back in those days when they were trying to figure out how insurance companies, they've changed now, they're pleased to pay off anything now.
Oh, absolutely.
So now, his second year, the first year was pretty much a bust. I'll say, when he did the spring washout, he got a new partner, and when they washed it all out, the gold, for all the dirt they had got, and figured up their costs and everything, paid off their store bills and everything, George said the doctor who came out to several times to visit with his friend who was dying charged $1 a mile, and it was like $8, 8 miles out, and so he got charged $16 a round trip. And he said that he just had enough money after the first year to pay all his bills. And the doctor bill was the biggest. But anyway, and they had on credit gotten a lot of their supplies in town. So he said, I can't go home yet because I'd look like I was a failure to my friends. Plus I couldn't afford to go home anyway. So in the summer, he tried to get a job. Well, they didn't mine in the summer, and so there were just hundreds of out-of-work people in the Dawson City area trying to find a job where they could get by through until mining season started. So he did things like cut wood, you know, because they had to, in the wintertime they had to have wood. So he did quite a few things. He kept busy, but he said it was pretty much no money on hand. But then the next year, you see him on the far right over there? The next year he changed his mind and worked for a bigger mining company where he was one of like maybe 20 people, and then he got wages for most of, I think it was most of the winter, I have to look it up again, but he got wages of I think it was $10 an hour plus room and board. And if you think about that, $10, not an hour, $10 a day in room and board, $10 a day, 7 days a week. So you can pile up a bunch of money, and in those days $10 was quite a bit. So that was probably where he got his money, that I mean, I don't think he got it from the gold himself, but I think he got it from the labor up there. But that, yeah, you can see him on there. This was a mining place. Mrs. Dugas was the lady who cooked and everything. That's their kids. And there's a guy with a banjo, some musical instruments there. I don't think George has got a musical instrument.
No, he definitely doesn't.
Doesn't have one. Yeah. So these are not necessarily pictures of George and his mine. I don't really know if they were, but this is some of the pictures from the mining in that area. And George had brought back some books on different things. And I'm not sure what that's supposed to show. I think that's a mine into a hillside, maybe. It's not a very good picture. And when they were digging, they came across these mastodon tusks. So somebody had collected a bunch of them over by one of the cabins there. It's kind of interesting. Here's a scene of downtown Dawson City, and the banners up there, the top one is kind of interesting. It's advertising how fast can you get out and back from town. It's a shipping or a line that you can go, like Vancouver, Seattle. It says 10 days to Seattle. Now, I don't know how that works. They could get 10 days. Maybe they had a balloon or something, but You can see out in front, there's some wheelbarrows and there's some stuff. Probably some event going on. This is a scene from up on top of the hill. Dawson City is just a little shelf right along the river there. And so this is a view of it from above.
But I think the purpose of taking it was that it was the land of the midnight sun. So this was
Oh.
taken at night.
Yeah. George also had said that the first summer that he was there, I mean, after the first year, the second be the summer that he was there full time, he had put a tent up on top of on one of the hillsides way up above the city and lived up there. And he said he didn't have to worry about people stealing anything. So here's a celebration. U.S. Navy, at the same time that this was happening, the Spanish-American War was going on, and George had, in his journal, had said, well, I don't know, I suppose I should join the military and fight in the war, rather than being out after money myself. But anyway, there wasn't really, I think they didn't really have that much need for soldiers. But so this is a celebration probably of some, well, it looks like two big pictures, so let's assume it's some political thing or something.
What years was he out there again?
1898 to 1900. He's about 2.5 years,
Okay.
not quite 2.5 years. So anyway, and by the time he got there, 1897 was, should have been there then if you want to get rich. By 1898. This isn't George, but this is an example of what the sluice thing looked like. You dumped your gravel into the, he's dumping water on top of some dirt he's put in, and then it washes down. And the idea is gold is heavy, and so everything else washes off and the gold stays behind. This is what George, this isn't theirs, but this is what they would have had. This is a picture, stage picture, of rescuing a person who had fallen down or gotten hurt in one of those mine shafts. And so this is what the type of thing that they would have had, and that Chris had somehow grabbed onto the rail and got thrown down into the bottom and then died. They said that he had, the 2 weeks he was alive, he had no pain because it was broken at the neck. So he didn't feel anything, but you couldn't live that way.
So you mined, as in going down?
Yeah.
And not only the river for gold?
No, the idea is old river valleys, the river itself, you could have probably mined in that if you got into it, but old river valleys, these little ravines that came down to the river
Right.
that washed in the spring, they had originally been bare rock, and then over the thousands of years, let's say, dirt had piled up, but the gold that came down through was heaviest, so it always worked its way down to the bottom, and so you hoped that your mining area wasn't too deep to get to the bedrock, and then you'd dig down the bedrock, and then you'd start scraping around, and every once in a while they'd take a pan of what they were doing to see if it looked like it was worth going, or maybe change their direction or something. And the pans were, they'd rate them like maybe 50 cents worth in a pan or something like that, and it was based on that. Here's an example of a sluice box. It's just a place where you had a bunch of like separate layers, and you washed the water over, and the gold would back up behind the riffles, sort of. And that's what they did in the spring. Inside of the gold was a lot of metallic, magnetic material, black stuff. And Vicky's got a jar of that black stuff. But so they used magnets to try to separate that out. This is a catalog of gold thing. There's a gold pan. A miner's horn was kind of a specialized pan that was used to try to separate the iron or the metal stuff out from the gold. It was kind of a special one. And then scales, so you could weigh it. Here's inside a mine. These aren't George, but the drift, they called it, as you went sideways. And here's another, just a drawing of a person. You had to have water to do this, and in the winter you didn't have water, so you didn't do it in the winter. If you were doing mining in the summer, you could go out. In fact, Nome, Alaska, they found a lot of gold right on the shoreline of Nome, and so they could go out there and do it. Okay, so that's my pictures, and we've got our 45 minutes in, 49 minutes in. So now's the time for any questions, other than how long did it take to get from, we probably have that somewhere, but let me just, what I'm doing here is, I was trying to figure out how I'm never going to write the book that I should write on this, so I thought, well, easy thing to do if you know what you're doing on web pages is to make a web page. So this is a page, and so this was the front page, what I showed you. I was going to do an education page, but he didn't have too much education. He went to the local eight grades in the Milltown school, and then he went 4 months to a Danish college, I think it was Grandview down in maybe Iowa.
Iowa.
Yeah, that was a place for, because they didn't have high schools around, so his education was pretty much limited, although he was, I would say he's quite self-educated. But he also was a chiropractor because his sister, which sister was the chiropractor?
Etta, Henrietta.
Yeah, she had gone to one of the very first chiropractor schools in the Twin Cities and became a chiropractor. And so George, when he came back, threw that in as a sideline and had done that. You don't see much about that, but he had a little notebook that said all of the things that you did for what symptoms and what medications and everything, so it's pretty interesting. But yeah, so anyway, that would have been
That's interesting that during those years, she was able to become a chiropractor.
Well, I have a feeling it didn't take a real long time, because I don't
No,
think he...
but she's a woman
Oh, yeah.
doing,
well, I think
If you had ever met Etta, you would know.
yeah.
I mean, that woman was
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
she
You know?
was a
think
force to be
Whoa.
reckoned
it
with.
was,
Yeah.
chiropractic was kind of a new thing, and it was sort of like open to anybody who wanted to try it. It was, if you think about what a chiropractor does, now I've never been to one, so I can't say anything, but the sort of a little bit like massage type thing and that, and so I don't know why it wouldn't be a appropriate thing, especially if you were
Oh, I see.
treating only women.
Oh, yeah, if you're treating on.
Yeah, and so, anyway, so another page I was gonna do was the farm pictures, because they had a lot of pictures.
That's my
of-
dad,
Is that your dad?
with the
old guy?
lines of the
Yeah.
horse, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's their house, another picture. It's,
This house it was a really special house for the time, because it was built just after the turn into the 1900s. And it was the showcase for several Danish carpenters in the West Denmark area. They took their talents and created this really special house. It's Queen Anne style. Considering the time, it had electricity, it had running water, it had a half bath on the first floor and a full bath on the second floor. It's a full 4 stories, because the basement is a full story too. There was a laundry in the basement, and then you know, like for canned goods and all of that kind of stuff. And that, you can see that little window in the very top. That was a full story attic. It was not finished, but it had been built with the idea that employees could live up there. So you'd have, you know, like hired help living in that. the bedrooms on the second floor, several of them had a sitting room with the bedroom, which was pretty glamorous. It had 2 gorgeous staircases. So this is looking at the front parlor. And so if you went into that front parlor, there was a stairway that went up that was a big curve. So like the stairways you see on the Gone with the Wind kind of look. And then on the right-hand side, that down farther is the door everybody used. This front door nobody used, because it went into the parlor that nobody used. But on the right-hand side, there was a door that went into, yeah, that's the
same view maybe.
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
that door everybody used. And when you walked in, there was a sink, because this is where the farmers came in. There was a sink to wash your hands, and then there was a toilet in an enclosed area, and then there was another stairway that went up to, with a landing, to the second story. And there weren't a lot of homes that had 2 complete stairways to go upstairs at that time. It was a great home to be a grandchild playing in, because if you can imagine all of us running up one staircase and down the other, oak staircases, you could clatter up one and clatter down the next one, and I mean it was a pretty spectacular home. All built, a lot of butternut wood was used because it was native to that West Denmark area, and built-in china cabinet with a pass-through from the kitchen to the dining room. You know, it was a special house.
So now the barn also was quite special.
Oh, incredibly special. You could drive a steam engine up that approach into the second story, and they could thresh in there. There was a silo in there. So there was a huge silo in the inside. And underneath, there was an equal approach on the other side of the barn. Underneath there were pens on those approaches for, because it was diversified farming, so they raised hogs and sheep and chickens, and I mean, along with dairy cattle. My grandfather's goal, and it was a really good goal, it was just that he was way too far ahead of his time, was to sell milk to the Twin Cities. It was going to go on the train and be shipped to the Twin Cities. Well, it happened, but it didn't happen until way after this. So, and first the Depression happened, which pretty much canceled everything. So, but it was, when the Hanson brothers bought this farm, they decided to remodel the barn, and they couldn't tear it down because it had been built so securely with rebar between all the concrete, because that's all concrete on the bottom. They gave up trying to tear it down.
It's like 20 inches or 2 feet.
Yeah.
Walls with hollow in the middle for insulation.
This is George's wedding suit here. We brought it out for so you can see that it's normally in the case back here, and we should probably see. It just says he was a member of the Wisconsin State Legislature and a socialist politician, candidate for. But anyway, that's ready to be used again. It looks like to me.
He wore it for the 50th anniversary. He had it on for a picture, I think. So he still fit into it, and I think Anna Christine, which she was always called Christine, wore her wedding dress, and that used to be here, but I don't know if it still is.
Well, it might be over there. I didn't really look for that.
But it might have fallen apart too. I mean,
I
that was
just,
pretty fragile material.
Saw this one here and here, and I thought we better get that out. So, are there any questions then on? Yeah.
Did he come home with substantial money or not?
He came home with enough money
That was a
to
lot
build
of
some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. With the
But I
house.
don't know.
I don't think he ever was rich,
Oh my God, no, everything
And-
was
Yeah. by
mortgaged to
time
the hilt.
Depression came, he was worrying about losing his farm
Yeah.
like all the other farmers too. And so. it
And of
was-
course, what had been done, which was commonly done, was that his father's farm was a pretty big farm, but it got divided in half for he and his brother. So that made it half as big. By the time all his 7 kids needed something, the oldest kids got educations. By the time it got around to my dad, no, there wasn't any money left for that. So, they had a beautiful place,
Yeah, the
but there
house-
wasn't any money.
House doesn't look nearly so nice now.
No, they took off all the porches,
yeah.
they took out all the woodwork,
inside is-
yeah.
There's still some nice woodwork.
Is there
in
still
there.
some?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think another talk about his political career would be quite interesting too. I haven't really studied that as much. Right now, when you see, when Mark Johnson heard Vicky's talk, I think in 8th grade, maybe, you gave your paper is down at Madison in the
Yeah, I've got a
archives.
copy, but I just
Yeah.
read it the other day. We're cleaning out our place, and so I've just been going through a bunch of this stuff.
Anyway, it impressed Mark Johnson so much that he told us that probably this is the most famous person who ever lived in Polk County. So-
It was, I probably made it sound like that,
Yeah, well-
you know? That was probably
I
me.
believe that. I think I probably come down on that too. It's a pretty interesting career anyway. And the gold part is really fun. If you wanted to read the diary, I did put it, this webpage is actually out there. You'd have to ask me where it is, but if you went to the front page, if I can find this, no,
I don't know where it is, though.
no, it's called sites.google.com/George Nelson Yukon Gold Rush home. Because I was just going to do the, if you're interested, you send an email to riverroadrambler@gmail.com and I'll send you the link. It's a work in progress, probably for the next 30 years.
You really think so?
Probably not. So,
Good thought.
but
Ever an
anyway,
optimist?
one of the things I did was I put out on a cloud drive, I put these 2 parts of the diary, so if you look at it, you can sit there and try to decipher it. Okay, this is 1899, home stake, that's at the mine, May 29th, Monday Eve, 10:04. Today I have finished sluicing and learned that, and cleaned up $56, and yesterday I cleaned out 121, and the total is 461. That is very poor, but I must be pleased. I done better than any except Peterson. I guess I will get more. I guess he will get more. And then he goes on, and somewhere not too far ahead, he tells about paying off his bills and realizing he's broke again. So.
One of the interesting things in the diary is that every little while, he'll have the price of eggs. Or in that case, it was the price of an egg.
Yeah.
And what those kinds of things cost.
And the first year, they were supposed to have their supplies, but they wanted some fresh food, so they'd go into Dawson City once in a while. And it was really expensive. And the storekeepers appeared to be pretty good at giving credit because they knew these people didn't have any money until they had the spring, and it seemed to be that people paid their bills up if they could. So there's when you start looking about the gold rush, there's quite a few books written. Jack London wrote about stories about up there. He was up there maybe just a little later than George was. And there's other people. Robert Service wrote The Cremation of Sam McGee and some of those poems. It was quite a interesting place for a couple of years. The place where he mined, if you look on some of these reality TV shows where they're mining gold again, they're going back through those same places and with their modern equipment and dredging and re-clearing out things and finding much finer gold than that these guys were able to separate out. So it's not actually finished up there yet. I think Vicki said that one of her cousins may have gone up there.
A couple of my cousins
Yeah,
went
went
and
up to
looked,
find the place.
found the claim and photographed themselves at it.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So, yeah, pretty fascinating story. So, that's it. Thank you for all that information that I